Good morning or good afternoon, football fans. Big Al here on this Tuesday, September 9th, 2025, and welcome into the season premiere of the week that was, where we will be taking a look at all the team and individual statistical numbers from every game from week 1 of the 2025 NFL season. And stay tuned till the end. I will have my week 2 power rankings as well. So stick around. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. And here we go with the week 1 edition of the week that was. And we're starting it off with the kickoff game from Thursday night, as the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles are victorious, defeating the Dallas Cowboys 24-20. So the Eagles will improve to 1-0 on the season, and the Cowboys drop to 0-1. We'll start with the individual and team numbers. We'll start with the individual numbers, for the Philadelphia Eagles, beginning with Jalen Hurts. 19 of 23 for 152 yards with no touchdowns or interceptions and a 94.2 QB rating. He was also the team's leading rusher, 14 carries, 62 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley was 18 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown. Your leading receivers were Jahan Dotson, 3 catches, 59 yards on 3 targets, averaging 19.7 a catch. Dallas Goedert, 7 catches, 44 yards on 7 targets. He averaged 6.3. Saquon Barkley, 4 catches, 24 yards on 5 targets. That's 6 yards a grab. Devonta Smith, quiet game for him. 3 catches, 16 yards, 3 targets at 5.3 per catch. And A.J. Brown, just 1 reception for 8 yards on his lone target. Jake Elliott was 1 for 1 on field goals. His long was 58 and 3 for 3 on extra points. Braden Mann, 3 punts, averaging 48.7 per punt. His long punt was 51 with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Okay, the leading tacklers for the Philadelphia Eagles include Zach Bond with 9 tackles, Adoree Jackson with 7, and Jordan Davis with 6 tackles. And all 3 each had a pass defense. Cooper DeJean had 5 tackles and a pass defense, and Quinyon Mitchell had 4 tackles and a pass defense. Andrew Mukuba, our first-round pick from the University of Texas, made his NFL debut with 4 tackles. For the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, 21 of 34, 188 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 76.6 QB rating. Leading rusher for the Cowboys was Javonte Williams, picked up by the Cowboys from the Denver Broncos in the offseason. He had 15 carries, 54 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Miles Sanders, playing his first game in Philadelphia as a visitor, had 4 carries, 53 yards, averaging 13.3 per run. CeeDee Lamb was the leading receiver for Dallas, 7 catches, 110 yards on 13 targets, averaging 15.7 per catch. George Pickens in his Cowboys debut had 3 catches, 30 yards on 4 targets, averaging 10 per catch. And Jake Ferguson, 5 catches, 23 yards on 6 targets at 4.6 per catch. Brandon Aubrey, 2 for 2 on field goals, long attempt 53, 2 for 2 on extra points. And Bryant Anger with a couple of punts, averaging 43.5 per punt. His long was 49 with one inside the 20-yard line. Both Malik Hooker and Kenneth Murray Jr. led the Cowboys defense with 9 tackles apiece. Kaiir Elam had 6 tackles. Jack Sanborn, former Chicago Bear, making his Dallas debut, also had 6 tackles. Sam Williams had 5 tackles. And Solomon Thomas also had 5 tackles for the Cowboys. Anna's in the house. What's poppin'? All right, total yards were 307 for the Dallas Cowboys, 302 for the Philadelphia Eagles. Passing yards were 188 to 144 for Dallas. Rush yards were 158 to 119 for Philly. The Cowboys had 22 first downs versus just 20 for the Eagles. Both teams did really well on third down. Dallas was 7 of 11, while Philly was 8 of 13. The Cowboys also was 0 for 1 on fourth down. 4 penalties, 42 yards for the Cowboys, no sacks taken, 1 lost fumble, and no interceptions. 9 penalties, 110 yards for the Eagles, 1 sack taken for 8. No lost fumbles and no interceptions. Of course, the big story out of this game is Jalen Carter of the Eagles, who spit on Dak Prescott on the game's opening play on special teams. He ended up being ejected from the game. And word from the NFL is Carter will not be suspended. He'll probably face a fine, but no suspension. Time of possession was 34 minutes, 52 seconds for the Eagles, and 25 minutes, 8 seconds for the Cowboys. Closing line was Philadelphia -8, and the over-under was at 47.5. I picked the Eagles to win this rather convincingly, 38-13. So I got the straight-up pick, but I lost the ATS pick of Philadelphia -8. So we are going to go 1-0 in our straight-up picks and 0-1 in our ATS picks, and I will tell you how I do with each game as we go along here. Then we had a special Friday game in Sao Paulo, Brazil, which saw the Los Angeles Chargers outplay Andy Reid's Kansas City Chiefs, winning 27-21. LA goes to 1-0 on the season, while Kansas City drops to 0-1. We'll start with individual numbers for the Chargers first. Justin Herbert, pretty good game for him. 25 of 34, 318 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 131.7 QB rating. Leading rusher for the Chargers is Omarion Hampton, 15 carries, 48 yards, averaging 3.2 per run. Herbert had 7 rushes in the game for 32 yards at 4.6 per tote. Quentin Johnston was the leading receiver for LA. 5 catches, 79 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 7 targets at 15.8 per catch. Ladd McConkey, entering year 2, starts it off with 6 catches, 74 yards on 9 targets at 12.3 per catch. And Keenan Allen, after a year in Chicago, he's back with the Chargers. He had 7 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown on 10 targets, averaging 9.7 per grab. Cameron Dicker, 2 for 2 on field goals, long 39, 3 of 3 on extra points. And he had 2 punts for J.K. Scott at 53 yards on average. Long punt was 56. Your top tacklers For the Chargers are Alohi Gilman with 9 tackles. Then you have Dayon Henley with 8 tackles plus a sack. And Derwin James had 7 tackles. On the Chiefs side of things, Patrick Mahomes, 24-39, 258 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. QB rating of 89.5. He was also KC's leading rusher, 6 carries, 57 yards, and a touchdown at 9.5 per run. Isaiah Pacheco, 5 carries, 25 yards on 10 targets at 5 per tote. And Kareem Hunt, 5 for 16 yards on 3.2 per run. Hollywood Brown was Kansas City's top receiver. He had 10 catches, 99 yards on 16 targets at 9.9 per grab. Juju Smith-Schuster, 5 catches, 55 yards on 5 targets, averaging 11 a catch. And Travis Kelce, 2 grabs, 47 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets, averaging a team-high 23.5 yards per reception. Harrison Butker, 3 for 3 on field goals, long attempt 59, 0 for 1 on extra points. Matt Araiza, 3 punts averaging 38.7 yards, long of 40, and 1 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Chiefs include Shamari Connor with 10 tackles and a forced fumble, Nick Bolton with 8 tackles, and Jalen Watson with 6 tackles and a pass defense. Trent McDuffie, 5 tackles and a pass defense. Drew Tranquill, 5 tackles plus 2 sacks for the Chiefs. Total yards, 394 for the Chargers, 347 for the Chiefs. Passing yards favor Los Angeles, 304 to 249. Rush yards, slight advantage to Kansas City, 98 to 90. The Chargers had 22 first downs versus 18 for the Chiefs. Kansas City was 5 of 14 on 3rd down, 3 of 3 on 4th down, while LA was 7 of 13 on 3rd down and 1 for 1 on 4th down. 10 penalties, 71 yards for the Chiefs, 2 sacks taken for 9 yards with no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. 6 penalties, 49 yards for the Chiefs, 3 sacks taken for 14 yards, no lost fumbles, and no interceptions thrown. Time of possession was 32 minutes, 44 seconds for the Chargers, 27 minutes and 16 seconds for the Kansas City Chiefs. Closing line was Kansas City -3. Over-under was 47.5. I did take the Chiefs to win and to cover, and I lost both picks. So I am now 1-1 straight up, but off to a rocky start with my spread picks, going 0-2 to this point as we go into the Sunday portion of the schedule. And we'll start the Sunday portion of the schedule with the Arizona Cardinals defeating the New Orleans Saints by a final of 20-13. Arizona is 1-0, while New Orleans is off to an 0-1 start. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray was 21 of 29 for 163 yards with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 108.8 QB rating. Trey Benson was the leading rusher for the Cardinals, 8 carries, 69 yards at 8.6 per run. James Conner held to 39 yards on 12 carries at 3.3 a tote. And Kyler Murray ran 7 times for 38 yards, averaging 5.4. Leading receiver is Marvin Harrison Jr., 5 catches, 71 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets. And then Trey McBride had 6 catches for 61 yards on 9 targets. James Conner caught 4 passes for only 5 yards, but a touchdown and 4 targets for him. Chad Ryland was 2 for 3 on field goals. His longest was 52 2 for 2 on extra points. Blake Gilligan had 4 punts averaging 47 yards, long punt of 60, and 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Cardinals include Budda Baker, 10 tackles and a pass defense. Mack Wilson Sr. had 8 tackles and a pass defense. Jalen Thompson, meanwhile, had 8 tackles. Then you got Max Melton with 6 tackles and a pass defense. Akeem Davis Gaither had 7 tackles and a pass defense. Calais Campbell, in his first game back with the Cardinals, had 5 tackles. And Dadrian Taylor Demerson had 3 tackles and 2 passes defense for Arizona. Over to the Saints. Spencer Rattler, 27 of 46, 214 yards with no touchdowns or interceptions. He had a QB rating of 70.4. Leading rusher was Alvin Kamara, 11 carries, 45 yards, and a touchdown, averaging 4.1 per rush. Spencer Rattler, 4 for 29 yards on 7.3 a rush. And Kendre Miller, 5 carries, 24 yards, averaging 4.8. Your leading receivers for New Orleans include Jawan Johnson, 8 catches, 76 yards on 9.5 per catch and 11 targets. Chris Olave, 7 catches, 54 yards on 13 targets at an average of 7.7. And Rashid Shaheed, 6 catches, 33 yards on 9 targets, averaging 5.5 yards per catch. Blake Grupe, 2 for 3 on field goals, long was 36, and 1 for 1 on extra points. Kai Kroger, rookie kicker from South Carolina, or rookie punter, I should say, from South Carolina. He finished with 4 punts, averaging 50.5 yards, long punt of 54, with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Okay, leading tacklers for the Saints include Pete Werner with 9 tackles and a sack. Demario Davis also with 9 tackles. Kool-Aid McKinstry, 7 tackles and a pass defense. Really? Give me just a second. This down. Alright, my Sports Alerts app just stopped on me. I'm trying to get back into this thing. Give me just a second for this thing to... There we go. And it sent me to the Week 2 schedule, of course. Anyway, before I was interrupted, these are the Cardinals numbers. There we go. Alright, Kool-Aid McKinstry had 7 tackles and a pass defense. I was about to tell you that Carl Granderson is a candidate for Defensive Player of the Week. 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 2 passes defense. Cam Jordan had 3 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and a pass defense as well for the Saints. Total yards, New Orleans 315, Arizona 276. Passing yards favored the Saints 208 to 130. Rush yards favored the Cardinals 146 to 107. 21 first downs for New Orleans, 19 for Arizona. 6 of 13 on third downs for the Cardinals, 5 of 14 for the Saints, who were also 1 for 2 on fourth down. 9 penalties, 54 yards for Arizona, 5 sacks taken for 33, no lost fumbles, and no interceptions. 13 penalties, 89 yards for the Saints, 1 sack taken for 6, no lost fumbles, and no interceptions. Time of possession is 33 minutes, 46 seconds for the Cardinals, 26 minutes, and 14 seconds for the Saints. Closing line was Arizona minus 5.5, and the over-under was 44.5. I took the Cardinals to win and cover, winning both picks. 2-1 straight up, and now 1-2 in my spread picks. Alright, next up, the Jacksonville Jaguars defeated the Carolina Panthers 26-10. Now, there was a weather delay in this game, which lasted a little more than an hour, but they did resume the game, and the Jaguars improved to 1-0 on the season, while Carolina drops to 0-1. We'll begin with individual numbers for the host Jaguars, beginning with Trevor Lawrence. 19 of 31, 178 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a 74.4 QB rating. Leading rusher was Travis Etienne Jr., 16 carries, 143 yards, averaging 8.9 per run. Trevor Lawrence had 4 carries, 12 yards at 3 per run. Tank Bigsby, in his last game as a Jaguar, 5 carries, 12 yards on 2.4 per run. Jacksonville would later trade Bigsby to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 5th and 6th round draft pick. Brian Thomas Jr. did score a rushing touchdown for Jacksonville. Okay, Brenton Strange was among the leading receivers for the Jaguars. 4 catches, 59 yards on 4 targets, averaging 14.8 per catch. Then there's Dyami Brown, 3 catches, 52 yards on 4 targets, that's 17.3 per grab. And Travis Hunter, the 2024 Heisman Trophy winner from Colorado, made his Jaguars debut. 6 catches, 33 yards on 8 targets, averaging 5.5 per grab. Meanwhile, Thomas Etienne Jr. added 3 catches, 13 yards, 4.3 average on 3 targets. And Hunter Long had a receiving touchdown for Jacksonville. Cam Little, 4 for 4 on field goals. Long 47, 2 for 2 on extra points. Logan Cook had 2 punts, averaging 55.5 yards. Long punt of 57, with 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Okay, your leading tacklers for the Jaguars include Foyesade Oluokun, 10 tackles, a forced fumble, a pass defense, and an interception. Andrew Wingard, 8 tackles. Tyson Campbell had 6 tackles and a pass defense. Also, you have Eric Murray with 7 tackles and 2 passes defensed. And Jordan Lewis, 5 tackles, 3 passes defensed, and an interception for the former Dallas Cowboy. Over to the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young, 18 of 35, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 49 passer rating. Leading rusher is Chuba Hubbard, 16 carries, 57 yards, averaging 3.6 per run. Tararoa McMillan, this is the rookie wide receiver out of Arizona, making his NFL debut for Carolina, had 5 catches, 68 yards on 9 targets, averaging 13.6 yards per reception. Chuba Hubbard, 3 catches, 32 yards, and a receiving touchdown on 5 targets, 10.7 per catch. And Ja'Tavion Sanders, 2 catches, 27 yards on 3 targets, averaging 13.5 yards per catch. Ryan Fitzgerald, 1 for 1 on field goals, only attempting for 48, and 1 for 1 on extra points. Sam Martin had 2 punts, averaging 43, long punt of 56, with both punts inside the 20-yard line. All right, Trevon Moehrig led the Panthers defense with 11 tackles. 7 tackles from Christian Rozeboom. And 6 tackles for A'Shawn Robinson. Total yards were 378 for the Jaguars and 255 for the Panthers. Passing and rushing both favored Jacksonville. Passing yards were 178 to 142, while rushing is 200 to 113. First downs also favored the Jaguars. 19 for Jacksonville, 15 for Carolina. The Panthers were the better team on third down, 8 of 15 versus Jacksonville's 5 for 12. The Panthers were 0 for 2 on fourth downs, while Jacksonville was 2 for 2. 4 penalties, 35 yards for the Panthers, 1 sack taken for 12, 1 lost fumble, and 2 interceptions thrown. 11 penalties, 93 yards for the Jaguars, no sacks taken, no lost fumbles, and 1 interception thrown. Time of possession, 31 minutes for Jacksonville, 29 minutes for Carolina. Closing line was Jacksonville minus 4.5. Over-under was 45.5. I took the Jaguars both straight up and against the spread. And I got both picks. 3-1 now in my straight up picks versus 2-2 ATS. Alright. Our next game is the Battle of Ohio Part 1 between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. I don't know why I did that. Anyway, the Bengals, with not a lot of offense, ended up beating the Browns 17-16 as they pick up a rare victory in Week 1. Cincinnati wins and goes to 1-0, while Cleveland drops to 0-1. The offensive numbers for the Cincinnati Bengals were pretty ugly. Starting off with Joe Burrow. 14 of 23 for 113 yards with a touchdown and no interceptions and only a QB rating of 87.8. Plus 2 rushes for 3 yards at just 1.5 per run. And then Chase Brown had 21 carries for 43 yards and a touchdown, only averaging 2 yards per run. So those are your rushing numbers. Your leading receivers are T. Higgins, 3 catches, 33 yards on 4 targets, averaging 11 a catch. Jamar Chase, 2 catches, 26 yards on 5 targets at 13 a grab. And newly signed Noah Fant, 4 catches, 26 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. Evan McPherson, 1 for 1 on field goals. Only make was from 35. 2 for 2 on extra points. Ryan Rackhouse, 6 punts, 52.7 average. Long punt of 62. He had 2 touchbacks and 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Okay, your leading tacklers for Cincinnati include Jordan Battle with a team-high 12 tackles. Demetrius Knight Jr. had 10 tackles. Both had a pass defense, and Battle also added an INT. And then Dax Hill had 9 tackles. Logan Wilson, 7 tackles and 2 passes defense. And then BJ Hill, no relation to Dax Hill, I don't think. He had 7 tackles and a sack. Trey Hendrickson also added a sack with 3 solo tackles. For the Cleveland Browns, Joe Flacco, 31 of 45, 290 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 75.2 QB rating, plus 2 rushes for 6 yards. The leading rusher for Cleveland was Dylan Sampson, rookie out of Tennessee. 12 carries, 29 yards in his NFL debut. Your leading receivers for Jerry Jeudy, 5 catches, 66 yards on 8 targets at 13.2 per catch. The aforementioned Dylan Sampson, 8 catches, which led the team. He had 64 yards on 8 targets and an 8-yard average per catch. Harold Fannin Jr. finished with 7 catches, 63 yards on 9 targets, and a 9-yard average. Cedric Tillman, 5 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets, averaging 10.4 per grab. And David Njoku, 3 grabs, 37 yards on 6 targets at 12.3 per catch. Alright. Andre Simpt, young kicker out of Syracuse, went 1 for 2 on field goals. His long was 45. 1 for 2 on extra points. Corey Bojorquez, 2 punts, averaging 48.5 yards per punt. Long was 55 with a touchback. Alright. Your leading tacklers for the Browns include Carson Schlesinger with 8 tackles. Devin Bush had 7 tackles plus a pass defense. Isaiah McGuire with 6 tackles and a sack. Myles Garrett, 5 tackles and 2 sacks for the Browns defense. Total yards, 327 for the Browns, 141 for the Bengals. Passing yards were 278 to 95 for Cleveland. Rush yards, 49-46 also for Cleveland. The Browns had double the first downs as the Bengals, 22 to 11. Both teams did well on third down, 7 of 14 for Cincinnati, 9 of 16 for Cleveland. The Browns also 2 for 3 on fourth down. 7 penalties, 33 yards for the Bengals, 3 sacks taken for 18 with no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. 7 penalties, 53 yards for the Browns, 2 sacks taken for 12, no lost fumbles, and 2 interceptions thrown. Alright, 35 minutes, 49 seconds is the time of possession for the Browns, which puts them in ball hawk territory. If you are new here, a ball hawk is a team that possesses the ball for at least 35 minutes in a game, whether the team wins or loses. In the Browns' case, they did lose, but they are ball hawks. Time of possession for the Bengals was 24 minutes and 11 seconds. Closing line was Cincinnati minus 4.5, and the over-under is 48. I took the Bengals to win and to cover. Got the straight-up pick, pushing my record to 4-1. Lost the ATS pick, dropping me to 2-3 in my spread picks. Okay. Our next game sees the Las Vegas Raiders in Pete Carroll's Vegas debut and return to the NFL take down the New England Patriots in Foxborough 20-13. Vegas starts the season 1-0 while the Patriots drop to 0-1. We'll start with individual numbers first for the Raiders. Geno Smith in his Raiders debut, 24-34, 362 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a 102.8 QB rating. Rookie running back Ashton Jeanty from Boise State had 19 carries for 38 yards and his first NFL touchdown, only averaging 2 yards per run though. Leading receivers for the Raiders include Brock Bowers, 5 catches, 103 yards on 8 targets, averaging 20.6 per catch. Then you got Jacoby Myers with 8 catches, 97 yards on 10 targets, averaging 12.1. I think this is Trey Tucker. Yep, Trey Tucker. 2 catches, 54 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets. He averaged 27 a catch. Dante Thornton Jr., 2 catches, 45 yards on 4 targets, averaging 22.5 yards per grab. And Michael Mayer, 4 catches for 38 yards on 4 targets at 9.5 yards per grab. Daniel Carlson was 2 for 3 on field goals. Long was 51, 2 for 2 on extra points. AJ Cole, 5 punts at 49.8 per punt. 60 was his longest with 2 touchbacks. Alright, leading tacklers for Vegas include Devin White with 11 tackles. Q Blue Kelly, 9 tackles and a pass defense. Isaiah Polamau with 7 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. And further down, Jermaine Pratt, the longtime Cincinnati Bengal, making his Raider debut with 8 tackles. You also had 3 tackles and a sack by Tyree Wilson, 2 solo tackles and a sack by Jonah Lealu, and 3 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble by Malcolm Kuntz. For the Patriots, Drake May, 30 of 46, 287 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and an 80.6 QB rating. Travion Henderson, the rookie running back from Ohio State, made his NFL debut for New England. 5 carries, 27 yards, 5.4 per run. Ramondre Stevenson was held in check as well, only 7 carries for 15 yards at 2.1 per run. Drake made 4 carries, 11 yards, only 2.8 per run. Keyshawn Boutte was the leading receiver for the Patriots, 6 catches, 103 yards, 8 targets at 17.2 per catch. Hunter Henry, 4 catches, 66 yards on 8 targets at 16.5 per catch. Stephon Diggs in his Patriots debut had 6 catches for 57 yards on 7 targets at 9.5 per catch. Travion Henderson, 6 catches, 24 yards, 6 targets, and a 4-yard average for the rookie. Demario Douglas did score a touchdown for the Patriots. Andy Borregales, this is a rookie kicker from Miami. He went 2 for 3 on field goals. Long was 44 and 1 for 1 on extra points. And Bryce Behringer, 6 punts, averaging 40.7. His long punt of 59 with 2 inside the 20. Alright, leading tacklers for the Patriots include Christian Ellis with 8 tackles. Craig Woodson with 7. Jalen Hawkins with 5 solo tackles, a sack, a pass defense, and an interception. Harold Landry had 5 tackles and 2.5 sacks. Alex Austin, 5 tackles and a pass defense. And Marcus Jones with 4 tackles and a pass defense. Robert Spillane made his Patriots debut on Sunday and had 3 solo tackles. Total yards, 389 for the Raiders, 336 for the Patriots. Passing yards, 333 for Las Vegas, 276 for New England. And rush yards, slight advantage to the Patriots, 60-56, although neither team ran the ball all that well. 21 first downs for the Raiders, 18 for the Patriots. 5 of 13 on third downs for Vegas, 4 of 14 for New England. Both teams were 1 for 1 on fourth down. 9 penalties, 81 yards for the Raiders, 4 sacks taken for 29, no lost fumbles, and an interception thrown. 9 penalties, 70 yards for the Patriots, 4 sacks taken for 11 yards, no lost fumbles, and also an interception thrown. Time of possession, very, very close, slight advantage to New England, 30 minutes and 5 seconds versus 29 minutes and 55 seconds for the Raiders. Closing line was New England minus 2.5, and the over-under was 44. I took New England to win and cover, and I lost both picks. So that makes me 4-2 straight up and 2-4 in my spread picks. Okay, our next game is going to be the Indianapolis Colts dismantling the Miami Dolphins by a final of 33-8. As the Colts improve to 1-0, while the Dolphins start the year 0-1. Start with individual numbers for the Colts, starting with Daniel Jones, who was named the starting quarterback after the unproven Anthony Richardson, or rather over the unproven Anthony Richardson. Danny Dimes went 22 of 29 for 272 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception, and a quarterback rating of 115.9, easily one of his best games in his career. Jonathan Taylor was the leading rusher, 18 carries, 71 yards, just 3.9 per rush. Then you got DJ Giddings, 12 for 41 yards on 3.4 per rush. And Daniel Jones added 7 carries, 26 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. He would average 3.7 per run. Leading receivers are Michael Pittman Jr., 6 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets at 13.3 per catch. The sought-after rookie tight end Tyler Warren, 7 catches, 76 yards, and 9 targets in his NFL debut, averaging 10.9 per grab. And that's pretty much it. Okay, Spencer Schrader was 4 for 4 on field goals. Long was 48. 3 for 3 on extra points. And there were no punts for the Colts in this game, as Indianapolis scored on all 7 of their offensive possessions. Leading tacklers include Nick Cross, Charvarius Ward, and Joe Bocci, all with 6 tackles. Cross added a sack with his 6. Rodney Thomas II had 3 solo tackles. Zaire Franklin had 4 total tackles. Kenny Moore had 4 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Cam Bynum, the former Minnesota Viking, making his Indy debut, he had 3 tackles, 2 passes defense, and an interception. Laiatu Latu also added a sack and a pass defense with his 1 solo tackle for Indianapolis. Over on the Dolphins side, Tua Tagovailoa, 14 of 23, 114 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 51.7 QB rating. He would be replaced with Zach Wilson, who went 5 of 8 for 32 yards with no TDs or INTs. He had a 70.8 QB rating. Devin Achane led the Dolphins rushers, 7 carries, 55 yards. That's 7.9 per run. All right, Tyreek Hill, 4 catches, 40 yards on 6 targets. He averaged 10 yards a catch. He did enter this game with an oblique and a calf injury, but he did play. Jalen Waddle, 4 catches, 30 yards on 5 targets. That's 7.5 a catch. Devin Achane, 3 catches, 20 yards, and a receiving touchdown at 6.7 per grab on 4 targets. Nothing for the place kickers, but there was a single punt from Jake Bailey for 42 yards, which landed inside the 20-yard line. Okay, top tacklers for the Dolphins include Jordan Brooks. He had 14 tackles, including 5 solo tackles. Tyrel Dodson had 13 tackles, including 6 solo. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, back with the Dolphins, he had 9 tackles and a pass defense. Afidu Melifonwu had 6 solo tackles for Miami. Total yards, 418 for Indianapolis, 211 for Miami. Passing yards were 262 to 133 for the Colts. Rush yards, a 2-1 advantage, 156 to 78 also for the Indianapolis Colts. Indy had 27 first downs versus 12 for Miami. The Dolphins finished 5 of 10 on 3rd down and 1 of 2 on 4th down, while the Colts were 7 of 15 on 3rd down and 3 of 3 on 4th down. 3 penalties, 15 yards for Miami, 3 sacks taken for 13 yards, 1 lost fumble, and 2 interceptions thrown. 4 penalties, 45 yards for Indianapolis, 1 sack taken for 10, no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. Alright, so it looks like the Indianapolis Colts will be our ultimate ball hawks for week 1 as they possess the ball for 38 minutes and 43 seconds versus only 21 minutes and 17 seconds for the Dolphins. Closing line was Indianapolis -1, and the over-under is at 47. I took the Colts to win and cover, and I got both picks. 5 and 2 in my straight-up picks, and 3 and 4 in my spread picks. Alright, next up, we're going off to the NFC East. As the Washington Commanders, the team that finished runner-ups in the NFC title game last year, kick off 2025 with a 21-6 win over the division rival New York Giants. Washington is 1-0, while New York drops to 0-1. Individual numbers starting off with the Commanders and Jaden Daniels. 19 of 30, 233 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and a 98.3 QB rating, plus 11 carries, 68 yards at 6.2 per run. The leading rusher for Washington is Shakori Crosby Merritt, rookie out of Arizona. He had 10 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown in his NFL debut, averaging 8.2 per run. Austin Eckler, 6 carries, 26 yards at 4.3 per pop. And Deebo Samuel also making his Commanders debut. 1 rush, 19 yards, and that rush went for a touchdown. All right, Deebo was was among Washington's leading receivers. He had 7 catches, 77 yards on 10 targets at 11 yards a catch. Chris Moore, 1 catch, 34 yards, only target. Austin Eckler, 3 catches, 31 yards on 3 targets. Noah Brown, 2 catches, 27 yards on 3 targets. And Terry McLaurin, 2 catches, 27 yards on 4 targets. Zach Ertz added a receiving touchdown with his 3 catches and 26 yards on 5 targets. He had an 8.7 average. Matt Gay, no field goals, but 3 for 3 on extra points. And Tress Way had 5 punts, averaging 49, long punt of 64, which is really good, with 1 touchback and 2 inside the 20-yard line. Okay, top tacklers for the Commanders include Bobby Wagner with 10 tackles, Frankie Louvu with 7 tackles, Quay Martin 5 tackles, Will Harris 4 tackles, and a forced fumble, Dorrance Armstrong 3 solo tackles and a sack, and Daron Payne 4 tackles, 1 sack, and 2 passes defense for the Washington Commanders. On the Giants side of the equation, Russell Wilson, 17 of 37, 168, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He had a 59.3 quarterback rating. Ugly numbers for Russell Wilson. He was the Giants' leading rusher, though, 8 carries, 44 yards at 5.5 per rush. Tyrone Tracy had 10 carries, but limited to 24 yards on 2.4 per run. Leading receivers include Malik Neighbors, 5 catches, 71 yards on 12 targets, 14.2 per reception. Wan'Dale Robinson, 6 catches, 55 yards on 8 targets, 9.2 per reception. And that is pretty much it. Graham Gano, 2 for 2 on field goals. His long is 55 with no extra points. 6 punts for Jamie Gillen at 47.8 per punt. His long punt was 65, and he had 2 touchbacks. Okay, top tacklers for the Giants include Bobby Okereke with 16 tackles, including 7 solo tackles. Paulson Adebo, longtime New Orleans Saint, now with the Giants. He had 7 tackles in his New York debut, plus a pass defense. Javon Holland also making his New York debut, coming over from the Miami Dolphins, had 8 tackles and a pass defense as well. Brian Burns has 6 tackles and 2 sacks. Total yards, 432 for the Commanders, 231 for the Giants. Passing yards, 212 for Washington, 157 for New York. And rush yards were 220 for the Commanders and 74 for the Giants. Washington had 25 first downs, New York 17. Third downs were a problem for the most part for both teams. 4 of 16 for the Giants, 4 of 11 for the Commanders. Giants also 1 for 2 on 4th down. 6 penalties, 35 yards for the Giants, 2 sacks taken for 11, no lost fumbles, and no interceptions thrown. 12 penalties, 89 yards for the Commanders, 3 sacks taken for 21, no sacks taken, or rather no fumbles lost, and no interceptions thrown. 30 minutes, 32 seconds time of possession for the Giants versus 29 minutes and 28 seconds for the Commanders. Closing line was Washington -6 over under 45.5. I took the Commanders straight up, but I took New York with the points as I was expecting a much closer game. But Washington does handle their business. Halfway through the schedule, I am 6-2 straight up and 3-5 in my spread picks. If you're joining me late, you're watching the week that was, as we're taking a look at individual and team statistical numbers from kickoff weekend 2025 in the National Football League. Stay tuned because we have our week 2 power rankings coming up. As now we are going into the second half of the week 1 slate, and we're going to start with the shootout at the Meadowlands as the Pittsburgh Steelers get a strong performance from former Jet Aaron Rodgers as they defeat Rodgers' former team, the New York Jets, 34-32. As Pittsburgh opens the year 1-0, the Jets drop to 0-1. Individual numbers first up for the Steelers. How about the day for Aaron Rodgers returning to MetLife Stadium to face his former team? Going 22 of 30 for 244 yards with 4 touchdowns and no interceptions and a quarterback rating of 136.7. So he was pretty much flawless in this game. The ground game wasn't flawless at all. Jaylen Warren was held to 11 carries, 37 yards on 3.4 yards per run. Former Philadelphia Eagle Kenneth Gainwell was 7 carries and 18 yards at 2.7 per run. Okay, top receiver, a new Steeler in this case, in DK Metcalf. 4 catches, 83 yards on 7 targets, averaging 20.8 per catch for the ex-Seahawk. This has to be Calvin Austin. Yep, Calvin Austin. 4 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets at 17.5 per catch. Pat Freiermuth, 3 catches, 28 yards, and 3 targets at 9.3 per grab. Ben Skowronek and Jaylen Warren both added receiving touchdowns, as did Jonnu Smith in his Dolphins debut, just 5 catches, 15 yards at 3 per grab on 6 targets. Chris Boswell, 2 for 2 on field goals, as long as a career-long 60-yarder, and 4 for 4 on extra points. Corliss Waitman, 4 punts, averaging 47.5, long punt of 50 with 1 in the 20, inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Steelers, you have Chuck Hart, Patrick King, and Alex Highsmith, each recording 8 tackles. Highsmith also added a sack. Deshaun Elliott, 6 tackles. Darius Big Play Slay, also coming over from Philadelphia, had 5 solo tackles in his Steelers debut. Over on the Jets side of things, Justin Fields was 16 of 22 for 218 yards with 1 touchdown and no interceptions and a quarterback rating of 119.1. Breece Hall ran with a purpose on Sunday, 19 carries, 107 yards, 5.6 yards per run. Justin Fields, 12 carries, 48 yards on 4 yards per run, plus 2 rushing touchdowns. And then Braylon Allen also added a rushing touchdown for the Jets. Leading receivers include Garrett Wilson, 7 catches, 95 yards, and a score on 9 targets, 13.6 per grab. Breece Hall, 2 catches, 38 yards, 4 targets on 19 per grab. And Tyler Johnson had 2 catches, 31 yards on 2 targets at a 15.5 average. Nick Folk, 2 for 2 on field goals, long 51, 2 for 2 on extra points. And the Jets' new punter is Austin McNamara. 2 punts averaging 47, long punt of 55, 1 inside the 20-yard line. Let's see. Quincy Williams had 6 tackles and a sack. Quinnen Williams had 5 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Marcelino McCrary Ball had 5 tackles and a forced fumble. Jamie Sherwood, 6 tackles. And Tony Adams also with 6 tackles for the Jets. Total yards, 394 for the New York Jets, 271 for the Steelers. Passing yards, 218 to 212 for Pittsburgh. Rush yards favored New York, 182 to 53. First downs also favored New York, 23 to 19. Jets much better on third down at 7 to 14 versus 4 of 10 for the Steelers, and 1 for 2 on fourth down for the Jets. 4 penalties, 26 yards for the Steelers. 4 sacks taken for 26. No lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. 7 penalties, 74 yards for the Jets. 1 sack taken for 6 with 1 lost fumble and no interceptions thrown. 34 minutes, 43 seconds, time of possession for the Jets. Very close to being in ball hawk territory. While the Steelers had the ball for 25 minutes and 17 seconds. The closing line was Pittsburgh -3, over-under is 38. I took the Steelers to win and to cover. Got the straight-up pick, moving my record to 7-2. Lost the ATS, dropping to 3-6, as New York does cover at home. Okay, wrapping up the early portion of the schedule on Sunday, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win a nail-biter against the Atlanta Falcons, 23-20. The Buccaneers are off to a 1-0 start, while the Falcons are 0-1. We'll begin with individual numbers for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers first. Baker Mayfield, not his best game in any stretch, 17-32, 167 yards. He did throw 3 touchdowns against no interceptions, though. Quarterback rating just under 100 at 99.4. Baker was also Tampa Bay's leading rusher with 5 carries, 39 yards, averaging 7.8 per run. Bucky Irving, 14 carries, 37 yards at just 2.6 per run. Emeka Egbuka, this is the Ohio State wide receiver drafted by Tampa Bay. He had a pretty good game. 4 catches, 67 yards, 2 touchdowns on 6 targets, averaging 16.8 per catch. Mike Evans, 5 for 51 yards, 8 targets at 10.2 per catch. And Sterling Shepard, 3 catches, 39 yards on 6 targets at 13 per catch. Bucky Irving also added a receiving touchdown for Tampa. Crazy Cajun is in the house. What's poppin', my brother? Okay. On to special teams. Chase McLaughlin, 1 for 2 on field goals, long of 48, 2 for 2. Or rather, 2 for 3 on extra points. Sorry about that. Riley Dixon, 4 punts at an average of 51.3. His long punt was 62, with 2 punts landing inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Bucs include Tyke Smith. He had 11 tackles and a pass defense. Savaka Dennis with 10 tackles and a pass defense. Zion McCollum with 10 tackles as well. Jamil Dean, 6 solo tackles and 3 passes defense. And Levante David had 9 tackles for the Buccaneers. Over on the Falcons side, Michael Penix Jr. played one of his best games as a pro in defeat. 27-42, 298 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and a 93.2 QB rating. All right, Bijan Robinson, just 12 carries, 24 yards at 2 yards per run. Tyler Algier also held to 24 yards on 10 carries at 2.4 per run. Michael Penix Jr. did add a rushing touchdown to go along with 6 carries and 21 yards at 3.5 a tote. Leading receivers for the Falcons include Bijan Robinson, 6 catches, 100 yards even, and a touchdown on 7 targets at 16.7 per grab. Kyle Pitts, 7 for 59 on 8 targets at 8.4. Drake London, 8 catches, 55 yards on 15 targets at 6.9 per grab. Younghoe Koo was 2 for 3 on field goals. His long was 41, and 2 for 2 on extra points. Now, the field goal that Koo would miss was a 44-yarder that would have forced overtime. He sailed it to the right. Bradley Pinion, 3 punts, averaging 46.7, long punt of 59, with 2 punts inside the 20. Okay, leading tacklers for the Falcons include, I'm going to run through these names. A.J. Terrell Jr., he had 6 tackles and 2 passes defensed. Xavier Watts, same numbers, 6 tackles and 2 passes defense. Billy Bowman Jr. had 6 tackles as well, plus half a sack. Jesse Bates also with 6 tackles, 2 solo, 4 assisted for the Falcons. Total yards, 358 for Atlanta, 260 for Tampa Bay. Passing yards favored the Falcons, 289 to 159. Rush yards favored the Buccaneers, 101 to 69. 23 first downs for the Falcons to 16 for the Bucs. 7 of 14 third downs for Tampa Bay, 6 of 15 for the Falcons. On 4th down, Tampa Bay was 1 for 1, while Atlanta finished 3 and 4. Uh-oh, you're sick today, Cajun? What happened? 5 penalties, 60 yards for the Buccaneers, 1 sack taken for 8 yards, with no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown. 8 penalties, 55 yards for the Falcons, 1 sack taken for 9 yards, no lost fumbles or interceptions thrown for them either. Alright, the Falcons are in ball hawk territory at 35 minutes, 12 seconds, while the Buccaneers were at 24 minutes and 48 seconds of time of possession. Closing line was Atlanta -1, over under 47.5. I did take the Falcons to win and to cover as the home underdog, but unfortunately they lost. So, 7-3 is my straight up record as of right now. 3-7 is my ATS record, which is really, really bad. As we are now going into the late afternoon portion of the schedule, and we will start with the San Francisco 49ers defeating the Seattle Seahawks 17-13 as the Niners kick off the season 1-0, the Seahawks at 0-1. Individual numbers for the Bang Bang Niner gang. We start with Brock Purdy, 26 of 35, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a 92.2 QB rating, plus 5 carries for 17 yards. Now, Purdy does have a shoulder and a toe injury, and according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, he is uncertain to play Sunday in New Orleans. But we shall see if he does. Now, the shoulder injury, from what I understand, is his non-throwing shoulder. So, there's that. And, of course, he does have that toe injury as well. Alright. Christian McCaffrey, 22 carries, 69 yards on 3.1 per run. He had a calf injury coming into this game, but did play. And in their newest addition, Brian Robinson Jr., previously of the Washington Commanders, had 9 carries for 33 yards on a 3.7 average in his San Francisco debut. Leading receivers for the Niners include Ricky Pearsall, 4 catches, 108 yards on 7 targets, averaging a cool 27 yards a catch. That's awesome. Christian McCaffrey, also known as Run CMC, he can also catch too. 9 receptions, 73 yards on 10 targets at 8.1 per grab. And then you've got Kyle Juszczyk, 2 catches, 32 yards on 2 targets at 16 per catch. George Kittle, 4 catches, 25 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets at just 6.3 a reception. And I think he's hurt as well. We'll check his story here. He has a hamstring injury and will miss multiple games, according to Niners head coach Kyle Shanahan. Jake Moody having a tough time with the field goals. 1 for 3 in this department, only making from 32, but he's 2 for 2 on extra points. Thomas Morstead with 2 punts, averaging 48. Long punt of 54, with 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the San Francisco 49ers include Fred Warner with 8 tackles. And then you got Nick Bosa with 6 solo tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. D. Winters with 6 tackles. Then Marquise Siegel also with 6 tackles for the 49ers. For the Seahawks, Sam Darnold made his debut for Seattle, went 16 of 23, 150 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions, and an 87.2 QB rating. Leading rusher is Zach Charbonnet. 12 carries, 47 yards, and a touchdown, just 3.9 per run. Kenneth Walker was limited to 10 carries, 20 yards, and a 2-yard average. Darnold added 2 rushes for 14 yards and a 7-yard average. Jackson Smith-Njigba, leading receiver for the Seahawks. 9 catches, 124 on 13 targets at 13.8 per catch. Cooper Kupp in his Seahawk debut, 2 catches, 15 yards, 3 targets at 7.5 per grab. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Jason Myers finishes 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 48 and 1 of 1 on extra points. Michael Dixon, we can talk about him now. He has 5 punts, averaging 51.8, long punt of 58, with 2 inside the 20-yard line. All right, top tacklers for Seattle include Julian Love, 10 tackles and a sack. Devin Witherspoon, 8 tackles. Kobe Bryant, that's C-O-B-Y, he had 8 tackles. Terrence Knight, 7 tackles. Ernest Jones IV, 8 tackles. 2 passes defensed, and an interception for the Hawks. Total yards, San Francisco 384, Seattle 230. Passing yards favored the Niners, 265 yards to 146. Rush yards also favored the Niners, 119 to 84. 24 first downs for the Bang Bang Niner gang, 14 for the Seahawks. 9 penalties, 61 yards for the 49ers. That's a lot of flags. 1 sack taken for a big loss of 12. No fumbles lost, and 2 interceptions thrown. 4 penalties, 30 yards for the Seahawks. 1 sack taken for 4 yards. 2 lost fumbles. Ouch. And no interceptions thrown. Time of possession puts the Niners well into ball hawk territory at 37 minutes, 58 seconds. While the Seahawks are at 22 minutes and 2 seconds. Closing line is San Francisco -2. Over-unders 43.5. I took the Niners to win, but the Seahawks to cover because I had the 49ers winning by a single point. They ended up winning by 4, but that's okay. 8-3 straight up, and now 3-8 in my spread picks. I really got to get those turned around though. Okay, next up, the Tennessee Titans and Cam Ward's debut didn't go smoothly at all as they lose to the Denver Broncos at Empower Field 20-12. Denver's off to a 1-0 start while Tennessee is 0-1. We'll start with individual numbers for the Broncos, beginning with second-year quarterback Bo Nix. 25 of 40, 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 60 QB rating. Not his best game throwing the ball in any stretch. Plus 8 carries, 18 yards at 2.3 per run. Leading rusher is RJ Harvey. 6 carries, 70 yards, averaging a cool 11.7 per run, I should say. And then new to the Broncos is J.K. Dobbins. 16 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown, 3.9 in his Denver debut. Leading receivers include Courtland Sutton, 6 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets at 10.2 per catch. Troy Franklin, he had 4 catches for 44 yards on 6 targets at 11 per catch. Evan Ingram, 3 catches, 21 yards on 4 targets at 7 per catch. Will Lutz, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 39, 2 for 2 on extra points. And then you have Jeremy Crawshaw. I think he's a rookie. Yeah, he's from University of Florida. 3 punts, 48-yard average, long of 53, all 3 inside the 20-yard line. All right, leading tacklers for the Broncos include Talanoa Hufanga. 10 tackles and a forced fumble in his Denver debut. Riley Moss has 7 tackles and 2 passes defensed. And Brandon Jones, he had 7 tackles. Justin Sternad, 5 tackles and a sack. Nick Bonito, 3 solo tackles and a sack. Jonah Ellis, likewise, 3 solo tackles and a sack for the Broncos. Over on the Tennessee Titans, Cam Ward again made his NFL debut. He was the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 draft. And he played like a rookie. 12 of 28 for 112 yards with no touchdowns or interceptions and only a 54.5 QB rating. Leading rusher was Tony Pollard, 18 carries, 60 yards at 3.3 per rush. He was also the Titans' leading receiver, just 1 catch for 29 yards. Calvin Ridley led the team in receptions. He had 4, plus 27 yards on 8 targets at 6.8 per catch. Chig Okonkwo, 3 catches, 19 yards on 4 targets, averaging 6.3. Chad's in the house. Was popping, my dude? Trying to smother some pork chops and probably make a potato stew if I can make myself do it. Yeah, okay. That sounds good, occasion. Okay. Joey Sly. Longtime commander, and I think he was a Patriot last year. He's now Tennessee's new kicker. He went 4 for 4 on field goals. His long was 50 with no extra points. And the veteran, Johnny Hekker, entering year 15 for the Titans. He had 8 punts, averaging 49.4. His long was 65 with 1 touchback and 2 inside the 20. Of course, Johnny Hekker replaces Ryan Stonehouse as the team's punter. Okay, leading tacklers for Tennessee. Okay, you got 9 tackles and a pass defense for Jarvis Brownlee Jr. He did get hurt late in this game. You had 9 tackles as well for Cody Barton. 8 tackles for Cedric Gray. Roger McCreary finished with 5 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Amani Hooker had 5 tackles and a pass defense. Busy day for Jeffrey Simmons, 4 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Nice job for the Titans defense there for Jeffrey Simmons. 317 yards of offense for the Broncos, 133 for the Titans. Passing yards, 166 for Denver, only 62 for Tennessee. And rush yards were 151 for the Broncos and only 71 for the Titans. 8 pins under average, went 7-2, so that's what matters. I went 204, 169, 178. Strikes were so hard. Yeah. Bowling is like that sometimes, Cajun. Bowling is definitely like that sometimes. There's no question about it. Okay, 20 first downs for the Broncos and 7 for the Titans. Tennessee, terrible on third down. They went 2 for 14. While the Broncos, not much better, going 6 of 15. Both teams failed on their fourth down conversions. 0 for 1 for Tennessee and 0 for 2 for Denver. 13 penalties, 131 yards for the Titans. Yowza. 6 sacks taken for 50 yards. Yowza again. 2 lost fumbles and no interceptions. 6 penalties, 45 yards for the Denver Broncos. 1 sack taken for 10. 2 lost fumbles and 2 interceptions thrown. Time of possession is 31 minutes, 56 seconds for the Broncos. 28 minutes, 4 seconds for the Titans. Closing line, Denver -9. Over-under is 42.5. I did take Denver to win and to cover, and this was my lock of the week. But Denver came within a point of covering that 9-point spread, so I ended up losing by that 1 point. So now I am 9-3 straight up and 3-9 in my spread picks. All right. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers, and it looks like we may be having a changing of the guard in the NFC North after the Packers dominated the Lions and won this game 27-13. So Green Bay starts 1-0 while the Lions are 0-1. Individual numbers first up for the Packers. Jordan Love, very good game for him. 16-22, 188 yards. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a QB rating of 128.6. Only 4 rushing yards on 3 attempts, that's 1.3 per run. Leading rusher for Green Bay is Josh Jacobs, 19 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown on just 3.5 yards per run. Okay, your top receivers for the Packers include Romeo Doubs, 2 for 68 yards, 4 targets, and a 34 average. Jayden Reed, 3 for 45 yards on 5 targets, and a 15 average. Dontavian Wicks, 2 catches, 30 yards, and 2 targets, also on a 15 average. Tucker Kraft had 2 catches, 16 yards, and a touchdown on 4 targets. That's an average of 8. Brandon McManus, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 38. 3 for 3 on extra points. Daniel Whelan, 3 punts, averaging 54.7. Long punt of 65 with 2 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Packers include Edgerrin Cooper with 10 tackles. Javon Bullard had 9 tackles. Quay Walker also with 9 tackles, plus a pass defense. Keyshawn Nixon finished with 6 tackles. Rashawn Gary with 7 tackles and 1.5 sacks. Lucas Van Ness also with a half sack, plus 4 tackles. Devontae Wyatt had 3 tackles and a sack, while Evan Williams closed with 3 tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. For the Lions, whose offense just was not working today or on Sunday, Jared Goff, 31 of 39, 225 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He had an 88.6 QB rating. Both Sonic and Knuckles were held in check for Detroit. David Montgomery, a.k.a. Knuckles, 11 carries, 25 yards, just 2.3 per run. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, a.k.a. Sonic, held to 9 carries, 19 yards, and a 2.1 average. Okay, top receivers for the Lions include Sam Laporta, 6 catches, 79 yards, 9 targets, average of 13.2. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4 catches, 45 yards, 6 targets, and an 11.3 average. Jahmyr Gibbs led the team in catches with 10, only had 31 yards on 10 targets, 3.1 per catch. Jameson Williams, 4 for 23 on 5 targets and a 5.8 average. David Montgomery, 4 for 18 on 4 targets and a 4.5 average. Khalif Raymond, 2 catches, 16 yards, 3 targets, 8 average. And how about rookie Isaac Tesla from Arkansas? 1 catch, 13 yards for a touchdown on his only target. And man, that was a pretty good catch. They did review it to make sure he did get in, and they ended up upholding it. So that's good for Isaac Tesla. Jake Bates, 2 for 2 on field goals, as long just 30, and 1 for 1 on extra points. Jack Fox, 3 punts, averaging 47.3, long punt of 55. Leading tacklers for Detroit include Jack Campbell, no relation to the coach, Dave Campbell. 9 tackles for Jack Campbell. Okay, 6 tackles for Derek Barnes. 6 as well for Terry and Arnold, plus a pass defense. DJ Reed with 5 tackles. And Brian Branch also with 5 tackles for the Lions. Total yards, 266 for the Packers, 246 for the Lions. Passing yards, 200 to 188 for Detroit. Rush yards are 78 to 46 for Green Bay. The Lions had 2 more first downs than the Packers, 16 to 14. Third downs were not good for either team. 5 of 15 for the Lions, 4 of 10 for the Packers. Both did fairly well on 4th downs. 3 of 4 for Detroit and 1 for 1 for Green Bay. Lions had 7 penalties, 40 yards. They took 4 sacks for 25 with no lost fumbles and 1 interception thrown. While for the Packers, they had 4 penalties and 40 yards with no sacks taken, no lost fumbles, and no interceptions thrown. Time of possession was won by the Lions at 35 minutes, 25 seconds, putting them in ball hawk territory. And for the Packers, 24 minutes and 35 seconds. Closing line was Green Bay -1, and the over-under was 48. I had initially taken the Packers, but I changed my decision to the Lions to win and cover. Unfortunately, I'm regretting that decision. So that drops my straight up record to 9-4 and my spread record to an abysmal 3-10. Ouch. The last of the Sunday afternoon games was probably the worst game on the schedule this week, and that's the Los Angeles Rams defeating the Houston Texans 14-9. As LA starts 1-0 on the season and Houston goes to 0-1. Individual numbers for the Rams first, starting with Matthew Stafford, 21 of 29, 245 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 109.1 QB rating. Good, not great, if you ask me. Kyren Williams was the leading rusher for LA, 18 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Just a 3.7 average running the ball. All right, Puka Nacua was the top receiver for the Rams. 10 catches, 130 yards, 11 targets, averaging 13 a catch, which is really, really good. Newcomer Davante Adams made his Los Angeles debut with 4 catches, 51 yards on 8 targets, 12.5 yards per catch. Davis Allen also added a receiving touchdown for the Rams. Josh Carty, no field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. Ethan Evans, 5 punts, averaging 44, long punt of 50, 1 touchback, and 2 on the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Rams include both Cam Curl and Nate Landman, each with 10 tackles apiece. Landman also had a forced fumble in this game. And then Byron Young had 9 tackles and a sack. Omar Speights with 4 tackles. And Jalen McCullough had 3 solo tackles and a sack. For the Texans, C.J. Stroud, 19 of 27, 188 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 74.3 QB rating. Leading rusher is Nick Chubb, 13 carries, 60 yards at a 4.6 average. Again, there is no Joe Mixon in the backfield as he is injured. C.J. Stroud, 5 carries, 32 yards, and a 6.4 average, which is pretty good. Leading receivers for the Houston Texans include Jaden Higgins, 2 catches, 32 yards, and 3 targets, and a 16 average for the rookie. Xavier Hutchinson, 2 for 30 yards on 2 targets, 15 average. Dalton Schultz, 3 for 28, 5 targets, 9.3 average. Justin Watson, 2 for 27 on 2 targets, 13.5 average. And then there's Nico Collins, who was held in check for the most part, 3 for 25 yards, 5 targets, and an 8.3 average. Kaimi Fairbairn, 3 for 3 on field goals, long of 53 with no extra points. Tommy Townsend, 4 punts, averaging 52, long punt of 61, 1 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Texans include Kamari Lassiter with 9 tackles. Jalen Petrie with 5 tackles. Derek Stingley with 5 tackles. Will Anderson, 4 solo tackles and a sack. Azeez Al-Shaair with 7 tackles and a forced fumble. Kalen Bullock, 3 solo tackles. Harry Tuotuo, 6 tackles, a sack, and a pass defense. C.J. Gardner-Johnson in his Texans debut had 4 tackles. All right, not a lot of offense by either team. 296 yards for the Rams, 265 for the Texans. Passing yards favored Los Angeles, 224 to 151. Rush yards favored Houston, 114 to 72. Both teams had 18 first downs. Texans were terrible on third down, going 2 for 9, while the Rams went 7 of 13. 1 and 1 on fourth down for both teams. 11 penalties, 80 yards for the Texans, 3 sacks taken for 37, with 1 lost fumble and 1 interception thrown. 7 penalties, 60 yards for the Rams, 3 sacks taken as well, but for only 21 yards, 1 lost fumble and no interceptions thrown. Houston wins the time of possession battle, 31 minutes, 25 seconds versus LA's 28 minutes and 35 seconds. Closing line was the Rams -3 and the over-under is 43. And this game went well under that total. I took LA to win and covered, and that was a wise choice. I am now 10-4 in my straight up picks, and 4-10 in my spread picks. Okay, that brings us to our game of the week. The Buffalo Bills, trailing 40-25 with 5 minutes left in the game. They would score 16 unanswered points in the final 4 minutes to knock off the Baltimore Ravens 41-40 in what I believe is the game of the year, only in week 1 too. This is incredible. With the comeback victory, the Buffalo Bills win a football game after trailing by 15 or more points in the fourth quarter. This is the first time they've done that since 1977. This is before my time, even. So Buffalo starts the year 1-0, and Baltimore drops to 0-1. And no revenge for the Ravens, unfortunately, as again, Josh Allen is him. Alright, speaking of Josh Allen, let's take a look at the individual numbers for the Bills. He went 33 of 46 for 394 with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions and a 112 QB rating. Very impressive. Okay, James Cook, among the leading rushers for the Bills. 13 carries, 44 yards, and a touchdown, 3.4 average. Josh Allen, 14 carries, 30 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 2.1 average. Alright. Top receivers include Keon Coleman, 8 catches, 112 yards, and a touchdown on 11 targets and a 14 average. Khalil Shakir, 6 catches, 64 yards, 9 targets, and a 10.7 average. Josh Palmer making his Bills debut. The ex-Charger had 5 catches, 61 yards on 9 targets, and a 12.2 average. James Cook added 5 catches for 58 on 5 targets at 11.6 per catch. And Dalton Kincaid, 4 catches, 48 yards, and a score on 4 targets, and a 12 average. Matt Prater, who was in Arizona Thursday before flying to Buffalo on a red-eye flight. He went 3 for 3 on field goals, his longest 43, and 2 for 2 on extra points. He would, of course, boot the game-winning 32-yard field goal as time expires to give Buffalo the improbable come-from-behind win. Brad Robbins, 4 punts, averaging 39.5, long punt of 48 with 1 inside the 20. Leading tacklers for the Bills include Christian Benford. He led the team with 7 tackles. Ed Oliver is right behind him with 6 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. 6 tackles as well for Taylor Rapp. Dorian Williams had 5 tackles. Matt Milano, 4 solo tackles and a sack. And Cole Bishop also had 4 solo tackles for the Bills. Over to the Ravens. Efficient game for Lamar Jackson in the loss. 14 of 19 for 209 with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. Near perfect QB rating at 144.4. Plus 6 rushes, 70 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He averaged 11.7 per run. Derrick Henry, monster game. He could have easily gone over 200 in this game, but he came pretty damn close. 18 carries, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 9.4 average, which is really, really good. Leading receivers for the Ravens include Zay Flowers with 7 catches, 143 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets at 20.4 per catch. DeAndre Hopkins, 2 catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown on 2 targets, and a 17.5-yard average. You should have seen that touchdown catch from Hopkins, that one-handed stab. It was so sick, y'all. Derrick Henry added 1 catch for 13 yards on his only target. Alright, looks like Baltimore has a new kicker. Tyler Luke, rookie from Arizona. 2 for 2 on field goals, 52 is his long field goal, 4 for 5 on extra points. He, of course, replaces Justin Tucker as the team's kicker. And Jordan Stout with three punts, averaging 50.7, long punt of 59, with 1 touchback and 1 inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Ravens include Roquan Smith with 10, Kyle Hamilton, 9 tackles, a forced fumble, and 2 passes defense. Nnamdi Madubuike, he had 6 tackles and a sack. And Malachi Starks, this is the sought-after rookie free safety from Georgia. He had 7 tackles in his NFL debut. Lot of offense in this game. 497 yards for the Bills, 432 for the Ravens. Buffalo has the big edge in passing yards at 389 to 194. That's nearly 200 more rushing yards or 200 more passing yards than the Ravens. But Baltimore had a big advantage on the ground with 238 rushing yards versus 108 for Buffalo. First downs favored the Bills, 29 to 19. Both teams were good on third down, 6 of 11 for the Ravens, 7 of 15 for the Bills. Buffalo also 1 for 1 on fourth down. 7 penalties, 51 yards for Baltimore, 2 sacks taken for 15, 1 lost fumble, and no interceptions thrown. 5 penalties, 38 yards for Buffalo, 1 sack taken for 5 yards, no lost fumbles, and no interceptions thrown. 34 minutes, 49 minutes in time of possession for the Bills to 25 minutes, 11 seconds for the Ravens. So if you look, these two teams combined for 81 points and 929 yards of offense. Closing line was Baltimore -1. Over-under is 51.5. Alright. I had initially taken the Bills, but I changed my pick to the Ravens. 31 to 28. And I had Baltimore winning as they would become the favorite in this game. Took the loss both ways. So now I am 10-5 in my straight up picks. And I fall to 4-11 in my spread picks. Okay. Our final game of the week is Monday Night Football. And it looked like it was pretty much a snooze fest for the first, 3 quarters. And then the Vikings offense woke up in the fourth, scoring 21 points and winning the game over the Chicago Bears 27 to 24 to start 1-0. And the Bears dropped to 0-1. Okay. Individual numbers for the Vikings, beginning with J.J. McCarthy, who missed all of 2024 with a knee injury. So this is his first start in the NFL. Slow at first, but really picked it up late. He went 13 of 20 for 143 yards with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception and a 98.5 QB rating. Leading rushers are Jordan Mason, 15 carries for 68 yards at 4.5 per rush. J.J. McCarthy, 2 carries, 25 yards, and a rushing touchdown at 12.5 per rush. And Aaron Jones, 8 carries, 23 yards at just 2.9 per rush. Your top receivers for the Vikings include Justin Jefferson, who also took a while to get going. 4 catches, 44 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets, averaging 11 per catch. Aaron Jones, 3 catches, 44 yards, and a touchdown on 3 targets at 14.7. And TJ Hawkinson, 3 catches, 15 yards on 4 targets, averaging 5 per catch. Will Reichert, 2 for 2 on field goals, long of 59, 1 for 1 on extra points. And Ryan Wright with 7 punts, averaging 47.6, long of 54, with no touchbacks, no punts inside the 20 or blocks. Okay, leading tacklers for the Vikings include Joshua Metellus. He had 6 tackles. Andrew Van Ginkel, 5 tackles and 2 passes defense. He almost had an interception in this game. Javon Hargrave, 5 tackles and 2 sacks. Very impressive. Eric Wilson with 5 tackles. And Isaiah Rodgers also with 5 tackles. And for the Chicago Bears, another ho-hum game for Caleb Williams. 21 of 35, 210 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and an 86.6 QB rating. Leading rusher is the aforementioned Caleb Williams. 6 for 58 yards and a touchdown at 9.7 per rush. DeAndre Swift with 17 carries and 53 yards at a 3.1 clip. Leading receivers for Chicago include DJ Moore, 3 catches, 68 yards on 5 targets. He averaged 22.7 per catch. Olamide Zaccheaus, 4 catches, 42 yards on 7 targets at 10.5 per grab. And Rome Odunze, 6 catches, 37 yards, and a TD on 9 targets. Cairo Santos, 1 for 2 on field goals, making from 42, and 3 for 3 on extra points. Torrey Taylor, 6 punts, averaging 44.3, long punt of 56, no touchbacks, and 1 punt inside the 20-yard line. Leading tacklers for the Chicago Bears include Noah Sewell with 9 tackles. Kevin Byard with 5 solo tackles. Jaquan Brisker, 5 tackles. Tremaine Edmonds, 7 tackles and a pass defense. Nahshon Wright had 4 tackles, a pass defense, plus a 74-yard interception return for a touchdown in the 3rd quarter, which at the point put Chicago ahead 17-6. All right, looking at offensive numbers, 317 yards for the Bears, 254 for the Vikings. Passing yards favored Chicago, 198 to 134. Rush yards, slight advantage to Minnesota, 120 to 119. The Bears had 20 first downs, while the Vikings had 14. Both teams finished 3 of 12 from 3rd down, which is nothing to write home about. Chicago was also 0 for 1 on 4th down. Eight penalties, 50 yards for the Vikings, 3 sacks taken for 9, no lost fumbles, and 1 interception thrown. 12 penalties for 127 by the Chicago Bears, 2 sacks taken for 12, 1 lost fumble, and no interceptions thrown. Time of possession, 32 minutes, 53 seconds for the Bears, 27 minutes, and 7 seconds for the Vikings. Closing line was a pick'em, and the over-under was 43.5. I took Minnesota when they were favored by 2 points to win straight up and to cover the spread. And thanks to that big fourth quarter, I ended up closing the week off with a win, finishing 11-5 for week 1 in my straight up picks, but only 5-11 in my spread picks. So that is the recap of week 1. That brings us now to week number 2's power rankings. And there is no change with 5 of the bottom 6, as we have a newcomer in the bottom 6. Alright, so starting off at the bottom, the New Orleans Saints is holding steady at number 32. This week they host the San Francisco 49ers. So that's back-to-back weeks hosted an NFC West opponent. Number 31 is the Cleveland Browns at 0-1. They are in Baltimore this week to face the Ravens. No change at number 30 with the Tennessee Titans at 0-1. They will host the LA Rams. And this will be Cam Ward's first home game in the NFL. Down 4 spots to number 29, you got the Miami Dolphins at 0-1 after that lackluster performance against the Colts. This week they host the Patriots. No change at 28 with the Carolina Panthers at 0-1. They visit the Cardinals here in Arizona, about 20 minutes down the street from my house. Number 27 is no change for the New York Giants. They are 0-1. And they are in Dallas this week to face the Cowboys. Up 3 spots to number 26, despite losing, are the New York Jets at 0-1. And they will host Josh Allen and the comeback Bills on Sunday. Moving up 1 spot to number 25 are the Las Vegas Raiders at 1-0. They will host the LA Chargers in the second game of the Monday Night Football doubleheader. Number 24 is the Atlanta Falcons. They're down a couple of spots, sitting with a 0-1 record. They will visit the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football. Down to number 23 are the Chicago Bears at 0-1, as Dan Johnson will make, as not Dan Johnson, but rather Ben Johnson makes his return to Detroit to face the Lions. Down to number 22 are the Seattle Seahawks at 0-1. They will visit Pittsburgh to play the Steelers this week. Number 21 at 0-1 are the Dallas Cowboys, up 2 spots from last week. They will host the New York Giants in week 2. Down from 17 to 20 are the New England Patriots at 0-1. They are in Miami this week to face the Dolphins, and everyone knows how tough it is having to go to Miami in September when it's still hot outside. No change for the Arizona Cardinals at number 19. They are 1-0 and host the Carolina Panthers. So they have a very good opportunity to go to 2-0 to start the young season. All right. My biggest jump in the power rankings is the Indianapolis Colts, moving up 6 spots to number 18 with a 1-0 record after their impressive performance against Miami. This week, they will host the defensive-minded Denver Broncos. So this is not going to be an easy one for them. Up 1 spot to number 17 are the Jacksonville Jaguars at 1-0. They're visiting Cincinnati to face Joe Burrow and the Bengals. All right. At number 16, holding steady, are the Minnesota Vikings at 1-0. They will host the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday Night Football. Then at 15, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, also not moving. They host the Seattle Seahawks. Number 14 is the Washington Commanders at 1-0. They're off to Green Bay to face the Packers on Thursday Night Football to kick the week off. Down to number 13, despite the narrow victory in Cleveland, are the Cincinnati Bengals at 1-0, and they will host Trevor Lawrence, Travis Hunter, and the Jaguars. This would be my biggest drop in the power rankings, as the Houston Texans move down 5 spots to number 12 with a 0-1 record. They will host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Game 1 of the Monday Night Football doubleheader. Also moving down a spot to number 11 are the Denver Broncos at 1-0. They will face the Indianapolis Colts. Entering the top 10 and dropping 2 spots to number 10 are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 1-0. They are in Houston for the first game of the Monday Night doubleheader. Down 4 spots to number 9 are the Detroit Lions at 0-1. They will host the Chicago Bears and their former offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. Inching up 1 spot to number 8 are the San Francisco 49ers at 1-0. They head to the Superdome to face the Saints. Down 3 spots to number 7 are the Kansas City Chiefs at 0-1. They will host the Philadelphia Eagles in a Super Bowl 59 rematch. In fact, the Los Angeles teams both had the biggest jump in my poll. The 2 biggest jumps, include the 2 Los Angeles teams and the Colts, had the biggest jump. This is the overall largest, and that's the Los Angeles Rams, moving up 7 spots to number 6 with a 1-0 record. They will face the Titans in Nashville in week 2. Meanwhile, LA's other team, the Chargers, are up 6 spots to number 5, visiting Las Vegas on Monday night for the second game of the doubleheader. Slipping a spot to number 4 are the Baltimore Ravens at 0-1. They look to get back on track against a Cleveland Browns team that could have beaten the Bengals. Up 3 spots to number 3, we got the Green Bay Packers at 1-0. They will host the Commanders on Thursday night. And then we have a new number 1, which means the Philadelphia Eagles slip down to number 2 as they visit Kansas City this week. I was not impressed with my Eagles on Thursday night. I will say that. That's the reason for the drop. And the Buffalo Bills take over the number 1 spot as they will visit the New York Jets. Okay, that is it for the Week 1 edition of The Week That Was, as we looked at the team and individual statistical numbers from all 16 games from Week 1 in the NFL. And you've just heard my Week 2 power rankings. We will do this every Tuesday, where we will recap the previous week and then hit you with the new power rankings for the following week. So make sure you join me every Tuesday for that. I hope to be back later on this afternoon with the Week 3 college football television schedule. So I'm looking at 506 Sports. Oh, cool. It is up. So I will be back in a couple hours with the Week 3 television schedule in college football. Okay, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching. And enjoy the pigskin. Peace out.